You stared at your phone last night and realized your contact list contains no one who can change your life. You believe that powerful people form relationships based on mutual affection or shared hobbies. You assumed that sending polite messages and asking for a brief coffee meeting would unlock the iron gates of the elite. Whoever abandoned the illusion of friendship and mastered the cold mechanics of utility secured their place inside the walled garden.
Understanding that admiration drains their energy forces you to change your method of approach and carry the wood for their fire. In his 1665 book, Maxims, François de la Rochefoucauld observes a cunning nobleman at the French royal court. The nobleman does not flatter the king or beg for a position. He stands near the marble pillars and studies the massive debts of the generals. He pays off the largest debt in absolute silence. He buys the sword.
The elite do not want your friendship or your polite conversation. Powerful people endure crowds of desperate individuals begging for a fraction of their time. If you approach a wealthy individual asking for a mentor, you become another heavy burden they must carry. You must approach them offering a precise solution to a problem they cannot solve themselves. You must become a ruthless tool that makes their massive empire run with less friction. You committed this exact error last week when you sent a desperate message to an executive in your industry. You asked them to review your work and offer their valuable advice over a quick call. You gave them a homework assignment and disguised it as a compliment. You watched the message transition to read and felt the sting of total silence. You asked the architect to carry your bricks. Admiration is a tax. Solving their physical problems gets you noticed in the crowd, but relying on official channels to make your introduction guarantees failure. In his ancient text, Arthashastra, Kautilya observes a cunning scholar trying to reach a reclusive king. The scholar does not send a formal letter to the heavy palace gates. He studies the private hunting routes of the monarch. He waits near a specific river crossing for 3 weeks. The scholar steps from the shadows holding water. Powerful people build massive walls to keep you out of their inner circle. If you knock on the front door, the armed guards will dismiss you with the rest of the desperate crowd. You must study their daily routines, their private habits, and their hidden vulnerabilities. You place yourself in their path when their defenses are down and their formal armor is removed. You make a calculated ambush look like a fortunate stroke of luck. You failed to execute this ambush last year at the massive industry conference. You stood in the lobby holding your paper business card, waiting for a famous executive to walk past. You watch them, surrounded by a thick wall of security and desperate fans. You never bothered to research the quiet hotel bar where they drink alone at midnight. You played by the rules of the crowded floor. Permission denies the access. Engineering the perfect ambush places you inside the room, but surviving the first 5 minutes requires erasing your own personality. In his 1597 essays, Francis Bacon describes a young courtier attempting to win the favor of an arrogant English lord. The courtier does not try to impress the lord with his sharp wit. He studies the slow cadence of the lord and his specific posture. The courtier matches the exact breathing pattern of the powerful man. The elite are obsessed with their own reflection in the water. They do not want to be challenged by your unique perspective during the initial encounter. They want to see their own genius validated by a competent observer. You must suppress your desperate need to sound intelligent in front of them. You listen to their voice, adopt their physical posture, their theories back to them using shifted words. You become the perfect mirror. You ruined a vital introduction last week when you met a wealthy investor at a dinner event. They shared a theory about the market, and you interrupted to correct their minor factual error. You wanted to prove your intellectual dominance in the first 60 seconds of the conversation. You won the argument and watched their eyes glaze over with cold indifference. You killed the alliance to feed your pride. Intelligence is a liability.
Becoming a flawless mirror makes them comfortable in your presence. But building a permanent alliance requires the law of the missing piece. In his 1739 memoirs, the Duc de Saint-Simon watches a low-ranking courtier navigate the brutal chain of command at Versailles. The courtier notices that the most powerful duke in the palace hates managing his sprawling country estates. The courtier travels to the mud, reorganizes the failing harvest, and returns with a heavy bag of silver coins. Building an alliance with a powerful person requires you to give them what they lack, not what they already possess. You cannot offer a billionaire more money, and you cannot offer a famous person more attention. You must observe their life and identify the specific boring tasks they despise doing. You perform that exact task and deliver the finished result without requiring any management or supervision. You remove a sharp stone from their tight shoe. You sat in a crowded conference room last month and watched the senior partner struggle with a complex software issue. You knew how to fix the broken presentation, but you stayed silent in your chair. You assumed it was not your designated responsibility to step outside your assigned role. You missed a perfect opportunity to become the exact mechanism that saves a powerful person from public embarrassment. Hesitation guards your invisibility. Removing the stones from their shoes earns their gratitude, but maintaining that new access requires a strict manipulation of your availability. In his 1684 Breviary for Politicians, Cardinal Mazarin details the strategy of a brilliant young diplomat in Rome. The diplomat secures a private meeting with a senior cardinal. He delivers a crucial piece of financial intelligence. The moment the cardinal smiles and asks for more details, the diplomat excuses himself and leaves the grand room. The law of the sudden exit dictates that your perceived value increases when your availability sharply decreases. When you secure a meeting with a person of high status, your natural instinct is to stretch the interaction to the absolute limit. You want to bask in the glow of their attention and prove your worth through endless talking. The powerful person views this lingering as a sign of low status and an empty calendar. They respect the walkaway. You violated this law at the corporate holiday gathering. When you trapped the regional director in a corner, you spent 20 minutes talking about your minor accomplishments, while their eyes darted around the room looking for an escape route. You confused their polite nodding with genuine professional interest. You overstayed your welcome. Mastering the art of the sudden exit protects your perceived value, but locking them into a permanent dependency requires rare intelligence. In his 1774 Letters to his son, Lord Chesterfield describes an ambitious politician moving through the high society of London. The politician never gossips about trivial scandals or common rumors. He cultivates a network of quiet informants in the foreign shipping yards. He attends a lavish dinner and reveals the exact arrival of a delayed fleet. Powerful people are isolated by their own massive success and surrounded by thick walls. They employ paid assistants who filter the truth and tell them what they want to hear. the ultimate tool for social ascension, is becoming an independent carrier of unfiltered truth. You must operate on the ground level, where the raw data moves before it reaches the secure boardrooms. You trade the brutal reality of the street for a heavy oak chair.
You held this exact power yesterday when you heard the lower-level staff discussing a massive flaw in the new product launch. You kept the information to yourself because you did not want to disrupt the established chain of command. You watched the executives approve the flawed design while remaining blind to the disaster waiting below. You held the map to the minefield and chose to let the generals walk in the dark. Loyalty requires their blindness.
Becoming the trusted source of dark intelligence pulls you into their orbit, but proving your value requires a calculated display of controlled disobedience. In his 1580 essays, Michel de Montaigne observes a trusted counselor serving a volatile French king. The king demands a foolish military campaign to satisfy his bruised ego. Every lord in the room nods in blind agreement. The counselor stands up, stares at the king, and refuses to endorse the disaster.
Powerful people despise the mindless servants who agree with their every spoken word. A leader surrounded by weak echoes feels a deep sense of isolation and creeping paranoia. They crave the sharp friction of a solid wall. You must master the art of the calculated refusal. You tell them they are wrong when the stakes are low, proving that your counsel is not driven by the fear of losing your position. Friction proves the steel. You played the part of the weak echo last month during a massive strategy meeting. The vice president proposed a marketing timeline that was mathematically impossible to achieve. You knew the schedule would destroy the team, but you nodded your head and wrote down the useless dates. You wanted to be perceived as a team player who supports the bold vision. You proved you are just another disposable passenger on the sinking ship. Agreement is a coward. Providing the friction of truth proves your absolute value, but preventing your replacement demands a web of mutual destruction. In his 1688 book, Characters, Jean de la Bruyère studies a quiet advisor walking behind a powerful French minister. The advisor does not seek public glory or ask for a noble title. He takes control of the minister's deepest personal secrets and manages his hidden financial mistakes in the dark corners of the royal court. The final stage of capturing a powerful ally is the deliberate creation of unshakable dependency. You do not want them to simply like you or respect your raw intelligence. You want them to feel a cold wave of terror at the thought of operating without your presence. You take control of a vital function they despise managing, and you hide the steps. You become the only person holding the heavy iron keys to the invisible vault. You ran from this precise responsibility last year when a senior manager asked you to handle a delicate dispute with a major client. You declined the task because you were terrified of taking the blame if the brutal negotiation failed. You retreated to your safe daily routine and watched another coworker step into the fire. That coworker solved the dispute and became the untouchable right hand of the executive. Safety is a permanent ceiling. You assumed that climbing the invisible ladder required a loud personality and a massive bank account. The advisor in the French court possessed neither of those common traits to secure his position. He possessed the cold calculation required to become an irreplaceable gear in a massive machine he did not own. He secured absolute power
without ever wearing the heavy gold crown on his own head. The strategy rewards the silent operator. Tomorrow morning, you will face a person who holds the leverage required to change the direction of your entire life. You will feel the exact same urge to ask for their favor and beg for a piece of their time. You must suppress that desperate instinct and look at their shoes. Find the heavy stone causing them pain and pull it out without saying a single word. Power responds to the invisible hand.
The historical courtier shared his brutal methods only with those who stepped into the dark to learn the truth. He hid his ledgers from the loud crowd and handed the map to the silent observer who wanted to understand the machine. Something on this screen is the modern version of that act of seeking. The aware minority grows one at a time.